Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to Italy. It's unseasonably strange weather here right now. Seems to be a lull in the wind. There's high winds a minute ago. I'm going to try and film this rather quickly. I want to talk about what's happening on board the container ship Alley right now in Baltimore, long way from where I am right now. But I've been reading some stories about the crew, about what's happening on board with the crew, and maybe we can talk about why it may be happening. The situation right now is that the crew is basically trapped on board that boat, that ship, should I say? Sorry, I work in the superyacht industry. I'm used to calling them boats and talking about motor yachts and not big container ships. From a crew perspective, very similar experience, even though the vessels are very different. The situation on board that vessel right now is that the crew have been on board since that incident, 26th of March. It's 50 days today that they've been on board that ship, not being allowed to go ashore. And I wanted to talk about that. I'm going to read something from BBC just to set the scene for what's happening. And then I'm going to talk about what it's like to be on board a ship for a long period of time and why they may or may not be doing what they're doing with the crew. I just wanted to talk about it, bring it up. A lot of people may not really understand what's going on. The BBC article, I mean, not just the BBC article, but other articles I've read on it, they read from a perspective of somebody who's never worked on board a ship. So I just wanted to talk about it from the point of view of someone who does work on ships, right? It says that they just did that explosion on Monday. To destroy the main part of the bridge. I'll put the footage on the screen right now so you can see it. To be able to remove that final piece of the bridge that was stuck on board that ship, so they can actually refloat the ship and move the ship out of the way. Now the authorities, the Unified Command in Baltimore, have said that it's always been the second priority to actually move that ship out of the way. The primary priority, or the priority, is to get the shipping channel opened again, right? So that falls a distant second in terms of that. And the article that the BBC wrote, it says the crew are made up of 20 Indians and a Sri Lankan national, and they've been unable to disembark because of visa restrictions, a lack of required shore passes, and parallel ongoing investigations by the National Transport Safety Board and the FBI. It says on Monday, the crew remained on board even as authorities used small explosive charges to deliberately cut an expanse of the bridge lying on the ship's bow. It goes on to say that among those who have been in touch with the crew is Joshua Messick, Executive Director of the Baltimore International Seafarers Center, a non-profit organization that works to protect the rights of mariners. I love these people because they do this, they're not there to make a profit, they're just there to look after the welfare of mariners, and we have them all over the world, but this is the chap that's been dealing with them. And he says that the crew has been left largely without communication with the outside world for a few weeks after their mobile phones were confiscated by the FBI as part of the investigation. He says they can't do any online banking, they can't pay their bills at home, they don't have any of their data or anyone's contact information, so they're really isolated right now. He said they just can't reach out to the folks they need to, or even look at pictures of their children before they go to sleep. It's a really sad situation. And they go on to say in the article that for the time being, the crew is being given SIM cards and temporary mobile phones without data, according to Mr. Messick. So why did they confiscate the phones? Obviously, they want to look at the data in terms of what happened on board. The thing is, they can very quickly download the entire contents of a phone. They can make a complete copy of a phone and use it forensically to go through data. They don't have to keep the phone for what's been 50 days now. It seems very odd to have kept those phones all that time. It's almost like they don't want them to be able to communicate with the outside world. Now I know that they've been given phones, they've been given a SIM card so they can make phone calls, but think about it. I think people probably watching this who've lost their phone, didn't have a backup. Think about it. People don't know phone numbers anymore, right? People rely on their phone, and not just for making phone calls, but for everything, paying, like they say, paying bills in the bank, sending money home. A lot of the crew in Asia and in those areas, they do a lot of, they send a lot of money back to their family and stuff like that. So to not have the phone is really a difficult situation to be in. Now, the vessel, after the incident, the vessel didn't have any internet connection. Not quite sure why. A vessel like that should have had some sort of basic VSAT system on board. Whether it was working or not, I don't know. Now, by the 1st of April, so like 4 or 5 days after the incident, they were given Wi-Fi. So I assume that was supplied by the authorities. I don't know if that was, or if it was just a case of there was an issue with Onboard. If it was supplied by the authorities, they've handed them phones, they've handed them SIM cards, they've handed them Wi-Fi. Let's say that is true for now, because I don't know if it's the ship's Wi-Fi or if it's been handed to them. It could be a way to monitor their communications, to make sure that they're not talking or saying things that they shouldn't be saying to anybody, right? Now, that's just conjecture. I don't know if that is the reason why, but it seems odd that they've not given them their phones back. In my own personal experience, when I go on board a ship, I will take my laptop with me, and my laptop and my phone are synced, so I could access my contact lists on my laptop. So if I was handed another phone and a SIM card, I could at least make phone calls. Your life's in your phone now, right? It's like everything, your banks, your WhatsApp, everything is on that phone. And even though if someone hands you another phone, another SIM card, it's not the same as it was 20 years ago. So what's it like working on board and being at sea, or being on board a vessel for a long period of time? Because the crew of Dali, they're not at sea, but they're in a sea state, if you like. The way they are on board right now, it's the same thing, right? They're not moving, but they're not allowed to go ashore, which is the same as when you're at sea. So what's it like on board? What do the crew do when they're on board? Now, if you think about it, the vessel was starting a 27-day journey from Baltimore to Sri Lanka. So they were planning to be at sea for a month. So the crew will have stocked up with the appropriate amount of food, supplies, water, what have you. They make their own water, obviously, but I mean, very often they buy bottled water and stuff like that to drink. So they'll have had all that on board, a good supply of food and all of those provisions, and all, like showering facilities, all the stuff that you use to take care of yourself. They'll have had all that on board for that trip. But it's been almost double the time that they were going to be on board now. And obviously they can buy supplies. I would imagine they can buy supplies in Baltimore and have them brought out to them. So for them, it won't be that unusual for them to be on board a ship for a long period of time. So what do the crew do on board on these long trips? Because it's important to understand, the culture of working at sea. I mean, the majority of your time you're going to be working, right? You're going to have very little time to yourself. You're probably going to be working shifts, so you're going to be sleeping a lot and working a lot. Now, in the bits of time in between where you have some time off, people will be, people spend a lot of time lying on their bunk, watching movies, playing video games maybe, and communicating with the family at home, loved ones, etc. Now, obviously, that third one they can't do because they don't have their phones. Now, if they have their laptops, then they'll probably be able to do it. But the articles that we've read, and the one from the BBC, seems to suggest that it's difficult for them to communicate. So it sounds like some of them don't have that equipment, if they didn't bring a laptop or another device that's synced. But that's basically what you do. Go to the gym if they have one, or you work out in whichever space that's been deemed the gym. So if they don't have a gym, they usually find somewhere to put some free weights and a few bits of equipment so you can exercise, go to the mess, eat, and that's it really, and that's your routine. But you become accustomed to it. It becomes a way of life, so much so that sometimes when you go home and you're on leave, you still do those things in your house. You know, you lay on your bunk, or you lay on your bed and watch TV, or you know, you kind of become institutionalized, like you do with any job like that. You know, if you're in the military, if you served in the military, which I have, it becomes a way of life, right? And it sort of becomes part of your personality. So it's not as sad a story in terms of the way the press have sort of put it out there. That you know, the poor crew that's been on board for 50 days. Right, that's not that unusual. But what is unusual would be if you couldn't communicate with your family. That would be, you know, cruel and unusual behaviour, I would say, because everybody's become so accustomed now to being in constant contact with whoever it is they talk to, that to take that away from people seems like a punishment, right? So I can see that being difficult. Now, there's one aspect of it that we haven't yet even discussed, and that is initially after that accident, they didn't have any internet for those 5 days, and they said that when they first got the internet, they didn't know what the world was saying about the incident, and they thought that they were going to be blamed by everybody for the accident, right? So that is that to not be able to get the answer to that, for those all of that time, to not be able to look at what's going on in the world and find out what people are saying about that incident, that must have been hard on those crew members, because you know you're lying there thinking maybe everybody thinks that it's our fault, that we did something deliberate, or we you know, it was malpractice, or you know, incompetence or something, and they're blaming us, and they weren't able to find out what people were saying. A representative of the authorities said that the crew are unlikely to be granted a shore leave until the vessel has been moved from that position. Anyway guys, I'm losing the light now, so I'm going to wrap up here. Being really interested to know what you think about the situation. Do you think they should be allowed to go ashore? Do you think they shouldn't be allowed to go ashore? Do you know any information that we haven't talked about here about the crew, the conditions on board, situation on board? Would love to know in the comments below. Alright guys, I'm going to leave it here. Thanks very much for watching. Please be sure to like the video and hit the subscribe button, and all that jazz, for future notifications and all that kind of stuff. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Bye bye.